Hello, today is Monday, June 17th, and welcome to episode 349 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI's Deputy Executive Director, Jessica Jones. Clearly, the coffee hasn't hit yet, and I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellow Les Munson and NSI Visiting Fellow Amy Mitchell. So over the last couple of days, Switzerland has been hosting a summit for peace for Ukraine, and at the end of the summit, issued a communique which affirmed Ukraine's territorial integrity and its right not to be invaded. Additionally, it calls for all prisoners of war to be released in an exchange, and for Ukrainian children who've been deported or unlawfully displaced to be returned to Ukraine. There were about 90 countries at the summit, and of those, 84 signed the final communique. Notably abstaining were Saudi Arabia, India, South Africa, Thailand, Mexico, the UAE, and a couple others. Brazil only attended the summit as an observer country and didn't sign, but our favorite NATO friend, Turkey, did sign. Really critical and really absent at the summit was China, which is, as you guys know, Russia's closest ally, and Russia itself was also not there. Before the kickoff of the summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin restated its own peace plan, which calls for Ukrainian troops to withdraw from some southern eastern regions of Ukraine and for Ukraine to drop its bid to join NATO. Ukrainian President Zelensky kind of brushed off questions about the countries that abstained from voting, saying that they could endorse it later. As you guys know, the timing comes at a critical juncture. The conflict has been waging for 2 years. There was EU parliamentary elections last week where we saw a surge for far-right parties, some of whom are sympathetic to Russia. We've got our own election coming up later this year. And so obviously the issue of ongoing support to Ukraine must be weighing on President Zelensky's mind. Okay, so Amy, you're our guest today, so you're in the hot seat first. We've got, there was some criticism that Russia wasn't at the summit and that nothing can be done if Russia isn't there. What do you make of that? There's also talks of another summit later this year to follow on the success or building blocks of this one. What can that accomplish if Putin isn't there?
Almost nothing. I mean, you can't, sorry,
Positivity this today.
but you can't make a peace agreement without two parties. So if one party is absent, right, logic follows that you're not going to have peace. And Russia not being there says that they're not done fighting. And I think that people need to recognize that they will continue to push until something shifts the battlescape in their, in one way or the other. You look at World War I. It took years for the parties to come together, but it really doesn't happen until one party really does not see a way forward. And I think the other part of the statement that came out that was really interesting to note was the territorial integrity. Countries that did not sign on to territorial integrity, which is an international standard and norm, is a little shocking, actually, because we're seeing this blurring from other areas of the world, particularly China, the PRC, the CCP, where they don't care about territorial integrity. You see it from transnational repression to the South China Sea. And so the fact that countries would not sign on to that part of the statement in particular is really concerning.
Les, Amy brought up our favorite friend, China, which has been keen to demonstrate that it's, a world negotiator. We've got the Iran-Saudi normalization deal. They've offered to help, broker peace between Israel and Hamas. They're absent, but they have their own peace plan out there that they continue to support. Zelensky even said that Beijing was kind of undermining support for the summit and, discouraging countries from attending. What do we make of their absence? Why might it be in their interest for this conflict in Ukraine to continue?
Well, China is clearly on the side of Russia. And so they want, the basic answer to your question, Jones, is they want Russia to win. And this little meeting wasn't going to help that happen. So they decided not to participate. I totally agree with Amy's assessment. I'll make the maybe further point that these events could be useful if they demonstrate kind of momentum and support in the international community for a certain position, and a lot of throw weight on that side. This didn't even do that. This was in many ways a non-event. Almost no news coming out of this. The news is that nothing of significance happened when a bunch of countries got together to talk about the future of Ukraine. The U.S. didn't even really send its A team or its B team to this event. No one of great policy significance,
Just
in
our
my
vice
view,
president attended, but
exactly, which is a pretty leading indicator that we didn't expect much to happen. There was a lot of criticism 20 years ago, 15 years ago over the Iraq war that the U.S. didn't have a plan to get out of it. We've made a massive monetary commitment to Ukraine for good cause. Ukraine needs help. It should be defended. It should have territorial integrity. Russia should not invade it and kill people and steal children. Those are all true things. Meanwhile, we've made this massive monetary commitment, tens of billions of dollars, with more to come in all likelihood, with no plan to end it or get out of it. And this weekend kind of demonstrated that the administration is just trying to keep balls in the air at this point. There is no actual plan for how the juggling act will conclude. We're just keeping stuff up in the air. And so in that sense, it was very revealing.
So at the end of the summit, when taking questions, President Zelensky, describing Western military aid, said, when asked, is it enough? He said, no. And he goes, is it too late? Yes. So what do we make of his statement? I mean, that's when we talk about not a positive messaging Monday morning. What do we make of that and Western support to Ukraine? Amy, I'll turn to you first.
Well, I just want to follow up something that Les just said. We've got conflicts now in 2 regions, right? And this administration is just trying to contain. And they are under the assumption that their superior, talking points and diplomacy will solve all the world problems, no matter where they arise. And we're in these quagmires around the world. And so I think Les brought up a really good point that we're just trying to contain, right? In terms of Zelensky, I think, he's on the ground. He's seeing what's happening. And he knows that if this goes south for Ukraine, we're right up against NATO countries. And there isn't a plan. Because I think that if Putin gets a foothold somewhere, he will continue to press forward. So what does that mean? Are we going to uphold Article 5? So there are some really big kind of far-reaching questions that need to be addressed. And, meanwhile, everyone's on the peace train in Switzerland, notably, absent, again, China. And China is loving this, that we're spending all this diplomatic energy sitting there in Switzerland, of all places. Why do these agreements always happen in these beautiful locales, right? Come on.
Beautiful mountainside.
Give me a break. Anyway, and we're flying like the people that we absolutely don't want in beautiful locales. We've seen this time and time again. Anyway, and giving them 5-star treatment. But China is loving the fact that we are expending this much energy in Europe, in the Middle East, and we're not focused on the Indo-Pacific right now.
Well, that's some somber assessments as we go into our new work week. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you to Devlin, Bernie, Claude Jennings, our entire NSI team, of course, Amy, for joining us today and putting together today's episode. We will be taking off Wednesday as a reminder for Juneteenth. So you will hear from us on Friday, June 21st, for another episode of Fault Lines, which is NSI's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. If you can check out our YouTube, you'll see Les's background, which is its own beautiful mountainside picture. He's holding his own peace summit, it looks like.
Tucson is the next Lucerne. Everyone says so.
Get your real estate now before it blows up. So check us out on YouTube. And if you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. We'll see you Friday.